It's nice to have Mathrubhumi stick to time so beautifully. So welcome. I just want to tell you that I'm a last minute moderator. So I'm not just going to play it by ears, but we're going to do a very smart thing that we moderators do. We'll open it up for question faster than the other sessions have, right? So I'm a storyteller and I've been a journalist. So I'm going to just ask all you ladies one quick question. What does the power of stories actually mean for each and every one of you as authors, as journalists, as someone who's been in the publishing business? What does the power of story mean to you? Mike, Nirmala,
Thanks, Preethi, for that question, and good evening, everyone. What does the power of stories mean? I think human beings have been telling stories from time immemorial. It started from the time we were sitting around fires in caves, back when they came back after the hunt and they were telling stories of bravery. Stories, I think, very briefly, stories are a means of comforting ourselves, of telling ourselves what has happened before, will happen again, and we will get through it, and to take courage from them, to take hope from them, to learn from them, and to live lives we don't live otherwise. I think that's what stories are for me.
I think she summed it up really well, Preethi. For me, I think stories are a way of life. I don't think I'd be able to breathe if there wasn't a story facing us every minute of the day or every hour of the day. I think they're very, very essential to our existence. It's just not about taking hope or learning lessons from them. It's something that feeds your imagination. It's something that builds your identity because they shape you. Stories shape you. Every time you read something or you hear something or you see something, you are evolving as a person. So if it wasn't for storytelling in whatever form, and I'm not just talking about the written word, I'm talking about the story that's woven into a textile, I'm talking about a story that you see on Netflix, I'm talking about something that you read on social media or the newspapers or just a book, whatever. Every bit makes you a different person. You're evolving every minute, I think, and that is the very basis of human existence. So that's what stories mean to me.
That's lovely. Yes, Nirmala.
That was so profound. So to me, a story, I mean, I'm going back to childhood, is about something that consumed me completely. Lights off, torchlight under the blanket, reading, and you're just so into the book. And the stories that transport you to different lands, to different time zones, to different people, places, and then where you lose yourself, and then at the end of the book, you're just unwilling to finish the last few pages because you don't want to find yourself, So that, to me, is the power of a fantastic story told.
And another question that I've always, because I teach storytelling, and as a teacher, I do get a little annoyed when nowadays the definition of story is a very terribly tiny tale. So my 20-year-old students, 22-year-old students are like, shorter the story, the better it is, and by short they mean just a paragraph and a half. I would love to know your take on the digital space. I mean, I'm keeping the OTT platforms aside, not the Netflix and Amazons of the world, but as writers, are you seeing a change in storytelling? And your comments on it, like whatever it is, I would love to know from the three of you, in any random order.
That's so weird.
No, come on.
Okay, that's, I think,
You
the
said
power
you had a
of
lot to
white
say.
hair. I think stories in any form, short, flash fiction, terribly tiny tales. I know the founder, and Anuj is a great guy, and I think he did a very brave thing when he started Terribly Tiny Tales. What you read on Instagram, what you read as just a passing any other social media post. What is Twitter? Like 140 characters or something?
It's increased, right? Someone young can have. It's not 140
God
anymore.
knows,
It's
that
more.
was Elon Musk
नहीं
doing
नहीं
weird
ज़्यादा
things.
है. 280 हो गया ना? हाँ.
But if it's communicating to you and if it speaks to you, so be it. There's also, in this whole thing of your question, one thing that struck me is shorter the better is not really a dictum.
Correct, correct.
What we are trying to do in publishing is trying to teach our authors not to be verbose. So sometimes shorter the better works there. I want shorter sentences. I don't want verbal vomit. I don't want adjectives.
Well, that's quite
It's obsolete. Don't say too much. Say less and then you say more. So there are different ways of looking at storytelling. I know it's annoying for some of us purists and traditionalists who feel that it's only books that can tell stories, or it's only the news that can tell non-fiction or whatever. No, the world is changing. We've got to evolve with it and get with it. And if storytelling in a short manner makes the youngsters read, I'm like, please, तुम उतना ही पढ़ लो, वही बहुत है.
अच्छा.
पढ़ लो बस. That's what I subscribe by that.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And there's place for every kind of creative talent in this world. One doesn't have to compete to be better than the other just because you're writing flash fiction or you're writing long Instagram posts or just tweeting. You still grab the attention of your target audience, and that's what you want. So to each their own. The power of storytelling.
Correct. That's interesting. I'm going to look at my students in a new perspective after this, but yeah.
So I tend to agree completely with Mita. And, we went from oral storytelling to writing on papyrus. We went from that to books. And with the Gutenberg press, the printed book, and then onto paperbacks, and the form of the novel was invented by that. And, we had the epics, and then the novel came as a bastardization of storytelling at that point, and it was seen as, something not so valued as a reading habit. The movies came in, we had the television, we had internet, we've had different forms of storytelling through human history. This is just a new form. At the end of the day, there's stairs and escalators, and both will take you wherever.
Awesome. Nirmala.
So I had a mentor, Peter Colasso, back in Bangalore, and he often told me that the oldest form of storytelling form of communication was advertising. Where people went on the streets and stood on pulpits and screamed, say, this person is going to come to speak to you, or this event is happening here, whatever. That was the oldest form of communication from where everything else evolved. So having dabbled, and also going back to school, we always found it more difficult to précis a longer composition or a comprehension piece, and there was a lot of art involved in that because they would ask us to read a book and précis the entire thing. And there is a lot of talent in that. You need to use all your time, space, and all those elements you need to integrate and bring it together. Now, and going forward, now with so many people dabbling in so many different formats of storytelling, be it in whatever, I talk more about the written medium because as a writer, I'm addressing it more from the perspective of a writer. So when I'm writing a story for the newspaper, I am able to tell the same, I'm writing about a music concert or whatever. I'm able to say it in 250 words. I'm able to say it in 800 words. And then if I want to flesh it out into a book, I'm letting my emotions flow and it turns into 60,000 words or 80,000 words or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's one thing, whatever you write, be it a sentence or a paragraph or 80,000 words, like Mita pointed out, you need to have a target audience, which is very important. And if that is sort of ingrained in your system as you're working on whatever you're working, the story also flows with that rhythm and that sensibility, and you're kind of, it's working. So that could either be, like we said, there are catchy ads which flow one sentence. The tiny tales are nothing but that, because a single ad tells it all, like you said. histories of the past and whatever. So that way. So yeah, to me, that's what it means.
Is there any question around digital space and stories that the audience want to ask right now rather than waiting for the end? Just raise your hands and you can shoot. No? Yes? Okay, no problem. I'm going to continue because as a journalist, when I meet a lot of my senior editors now, you know, who've shifted gears, the first thing they tell me is, yaar, text to mar gaya yaar, abhi to khali video hi hai. Right? So my question is very pointed. Is a book still relevant? Or is, you know, because first thing they'll be like, now you have to also look good. It's not about writing. So first thing they tell me is, text is gone and now apan sab video pe hi hai, right? Or you have to do both. So how does it work? And after that, I would love to know more details about, of course, your books, your characters, etc. But before that, I thought I just set the premise on the relevance part of it because it bugs me often, you know. So the relevance of a book and text is dead, videos in Dabad. I would love to know your take on that. Yeah, considering that your kitab bahar aayi hai, you should, yeah.
So I do hope that the book is not dead because I continue to write books and get them published. And Mita continues to age in them, Nirmala continues to write them, and I hope we all continue to read books. There will always be an audience for stories. It depends on the form and how we consume them. There will be an audience that will consume visual medium because it's easier and it doesn't involve you as much as a book does, because a book is a very solitary and a very intense activity. Viewing is, you let your brain run with the characters, everything is put out for you. Your imagination doesn't really need to work to even fill in the blanks as to how the character looks or behaves. Of course, smells don't come into movies and visuals. But books, yes, books will stay relevant. I am an optimist. I like to believe, I like to hope that books will continue to stay relevant. They've stayed relevant for my lifetime and the lifetime that was before me, my parents' lifetime. There may be new forms. We have Kindle, we have e-books, we have audible books, we have audio books that people listen to. So the forms may be new, but the book per se, I believe, will continue. And I hope I'm proved right. And yes, I have a new book out. I'm shamelessly plugging it.
No, and I think maybe you can talk a little about the new book. Abhi agar aap baat karna chahe, that's okay.
Hanji. So this book is a book that talks about what happens if you're living multiple lives at the same time. And it's trying to resolve childhood trauma, and it's trying to go back to your past and trying to go into your future and trying to make all the tangled skeins come together. And the protagonist is, you meet her as an 8-year-old, you meet her as a 38-year-old, you meet her as a 28-year-old, and she's living these parallel lives. And I've tried to really figure out, and I don't think I still have the answer after writing it, is that if you interfere with any one thing in your life, does it change anything at all? Or does it set into motion something that's completely not what you expected? And why do we constantly keep revisiting our past? It's like picking a scab. So that's the nub of the book. And it's, yes, it's a little soft sci-fi, not too hard. But we do have time travel in that. That's what I'd like to add.
Well, that's nice. And that book is available. So all those who want to, ji bilkul, this is the moment when you should display the book and say, le lijiyega abhi, right? Marketing to banta hai na? Hai na? Okay, so continuing with the previous question to the two of you at any point, because I think everyone has been a journalist more or less on this panel. Tune bhi kiya hua hai na? So matlab, what is your take? Because abhi bhi print mar raha hai, this mar raha hai. You constantly get to hear that very soon you're only going to have news coming in like this. Everybody gets it instantly. And nowadays news articles also say this is a 2-minute read. This is a 1-minute read. Yeah. And then I've never understood that. Ki tumhe kaise pata? Matlab, how do they judge that these many words will happen in 2 minutes? This much will happen in 1 minute. There is. Please tell us more about it after you're done. Oh, that's awesome.
Is Mita going or am I? Yeah, okay. So I don't think the book is dying because every celebrity wants to write a book. So basically, actors want to write books, industrialists want to write books. Everybody wants that written medium to, showcase, because they know that's what is going to stand the test of time, and that's what they want to put on their shelves, and it's still a very prestigious thing to do. So fortunately, I don't think we are not living in an age where the written word or the book is dying, for sure. And everybody, I meet many people who say, oh, I'm doing this, please write a book about my work, you know. So this, everybody wants it documented in a book. And having said that, of course, it's just assumed different mediums. We will have the book in print form, and as well as I mean, someone like me can never read a book online. I don't think I'll ever finish beyond 800 words online. But it's here to stay. It may go through its own dips, ups and downs, but at the end of the day, everybody likes collecting a painting that's been there ages, an old carpet, old books, whatever. And I hope one day, centuries later, somebody, oh, I have an old copy of Taboo or Hunger's Daughters or Kiran's book or whatever. You know, so we are doing the right thing. It's just to the test of time and we are there.
I love that. Yes. And ma'am, वो algorithm का भी बताना थोड़ा सा. It's very intriguing.
My first Frankfurt book fair was about 12 or 13 years, or maybe more. Kindle had just started, you know, like as a technology, it had just hit the market. And the first seminar I walked into was, is the book going to die? And industry experts from all over the world were like debating. There was a panel discussion and all of that. And I was sitting at the back and wondering why so much hoo-ha is being done. I mean, haven't you seen, especially I think we coming from India where we've seen our scripture survive. Where is the book going to go? And she's right. I mean, come on, have you seen the kind of advance that Harry got? Do you know he's already sold over 4.5 million copies? Out of which 1.5 or close to 2 million copies were on pre-order booked. So books are not going anywhere. And it's not about just celebrities writing. We are human beings. We are communicators. We have stories to tell. If we stop doing that, we will endanger our own existence. So the book ain't going anywhere.
And stories should not be going anywhere because
Absolutely.
I think you're
whether
right.
it's
It's
fiction,
identity,
non-fiction,
yes.
whatever. Yeah. The only thing is we are a third world country and publishing industry faces its own challenges. But I think what we pose as an example to the world is our inherent resilience as an Indian civilization, as an Indian collective, as a nation. Is that power, and we will continue to do so. So she rightly said there are dips, phases happen, mediums change. That's fine. It happens with everyone. I mean, China is producing Banarsi saris, so Banaras hasn't stopped. Same way, we won't stop. As far as the algorithm is concerned, it's all computerized. Because they have, everything is measured. The reading speed and all of that, you know, there are some sample people who are, it's all laboratory tested, literally. Yeah, it's just very disheartening, but it's also, I'm just amused by it. I laugh.
Yeah. I think that's the right word. You're amused by it. Coming to characters in all your books, in terms of storytelling, and मैं film में भी बहुत देखती हूँ, and I think characters just stay back, you know. For me, even today, as authors, you might want to kill me, but I always take back a lot from Harry Potter. You know, for me, a chocolate is the warmth, is love. You know, Mama ka pyar saved him types, you know, and there's so many nuances that you can pick up. So in terms of characters and your books, the three of you, what makes them powerful, and how do you sort of plan it out? मतलब जब आप लिखते हैं, like for example your new book, you know, because this is a little bit of a past, and हम past खुरेदते हैं अपना, and that kind of constantly gives us problems. How do you work around characters, and how do you make them the heroes or the protagonists? Some characters आपकी पुरानी किताबों से भी, अगर आप उसके बारे में, if you'd like to say something. Is there an order only we are following?
No.
So how do you create characters? I think a book is all about character first. if you don't identify or empathize or are fascinated or in awe of the character, the protagonist, what will make you carry through that story? Why will you care about what happens to that person? Why will you sit through so many thousand words about that person? So either you need to have some strong emotional reaction to that character. It can be empathy, it can be solidarity, it can be even curiosity. So or even hatred. I mean, somebody like a Hannibal Lecter will totally fascinate you and repulse you. Somebody like a Humbert will repulse you completely. But still, I mean, that character was so strong and that writing was so powerful. You read through Lolita like, ugh, but I want to read it. So that's the power of storytelling. That's the power of a strong character. That's the power of Harry Potter, what made you believe in a world which had muggles and 4 and 3/4 railway stations and trains and all kinds of fantastical creatures. How do you create characters? I wish I knew. That's my honest answer. It is, for me, how it works for me is it comes to me full-fledged in my head. The character comes as a person, as somebody I can have a conversation with, somebody sitting across to me. Unless I can visualize the character as a real, living, breathing, alive person, I can't really sit down to write that person. So with this book with Naina, who was an 8-year-old, I think I dwelled back into my 8-year-old self and what I was like at that point, and drew all. And of course, you observe people in that space around you, and children or whoever's there, and you pick and choose things you want to include and you don't. Same with the 32-year-old, same with the 28-year-old, same with, I have a 40-year-old protagonist in Missing Presumed Dead with mental health issues. So there is a lot of research that goes in because these are not light subjects. And for me, the greatest compliment is when, I'm rambling, I'm sorry. But the greatest compliment is when somebody asks me, so did you have somebody with these issues in your family? So I say no.
It's practically the character is alive.
Yeah.
She's there.
So then I think my research has worked off and my empathy for the character has come through. So that's how I like to write my characters.
Yeah. So to me, my characters have evolved out of my experiences, my own life experiences. So I document for the social sector, and when I was in rural Orissa in the Naxal regions in Baud and Balangir, I came across this little child who we had gone to meet them, and we were waiting at the government school, and she was 12 years old and lived in this little far-flung village with about 10 hutments, 10 households. And she didn't come, but she was the brightest kid over there who was rearing ducks and everything. And then we waited for an hour, and one of the social workers said, they were whispering. I said, what happened? And then said, come, let's go to her place. So we walked down that road and marched up to a house, and then there was this little flash of pink standing by the door, wearing a pink salwar kameez, all of 12 years old, bright sparkling eyes, but almost teary-eyed. Her mother had left her that day. She had gone off somewhere. And her father had been long dead. And this child was all alone at home. I just went and grabbed her in my arms and I just hugged her so tight. She didn't know who I was. I didn't know who she was. And then we came back and sat there, and within an hour, that child was so full of sparkle, such metal, And then in those villages, they have these little Baal sangs where the children actually watch out for each other. And the beauty of a tribal community is when somebody goes missing, the entire community steps in to take care of you. And this child had already been doing a lot. She was rearing ducks, she was looking after the fields and everything, and she was going to do what she did. And she spoke to us and she played with us after that. So she pretty much became one of the protagonists of my story. And because that was about young breadwinners, I came back, I submitted my documentation work. I had gone on some honorary work to Orissa and Jharkhand. And Hunger's Daughters just took shape. I had so much inside me, these pent-up emotions, that it just started flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing. The characters were live. Of course, I've used a lot of magic realism and, you know, a lot of pulling out from other characters I have met. And then there are the good men in the book because, you know, who come in the end. You know, I was sitting in Koshi's in a restaurant in Bangalore, which is my favorite place. And you suddenly have the owner, Prem Koshi, Swami Vishnu Premanand, who comes there and takes on everybody and all that. Then there's an Inspector General, Tafwinder Singh Bawa, like Derais Tarapur Wala. He was one of the main editors, directors of NDTV. So he wanted to be called Tafwinder. Said, okay, it's Tafwinder Singh Bawa. So you have all these characters. It was such a beautiful catharsis, such a spectacular experience. And I was working, I had just quit Times, and then there were these youngsters who were kind of interning with us. So they would read every day, say, what's coming next, what's coming next? So that's how it just flowed, and Hunger's Daughters happened. And at another time, I had again gone, my good friend Catherine works for an organization which rescues and rehabilitates underage girls who are kidnapped and trafficked. And I had been to Ooty, and then I landed up in Calcutta. And the day I went there was this young girl who was about 21, who came, and then they make jewelry. They are taught to design fashion jewelry. And she told me, and she came and gave me her wedding card. We took a walk around there was a little lake across there in New Garia. And then she started to open up. I was talking to her, and she said her own sister and brother-in-law had sold her off when she was 8 years old. She landed up in a brothel where, she did not want to have any customers. And a woman who was above 40 said, I will look after you. The pimp overheard it and stabbed that woman in front of this child, stabbed her to death. So that was her beginning into the precipice or whatever. But then this organization rescued her when she was about 13, 14. But she had come out, and overcome it all. And then through all the rehabilitation, was now the manager of the workshop, had found love and was getting married. So for me, it's about these very, very, very strong characters who live in our India, the India, which we never talk about. Because to me, the cities are a very minuscule part of this whole country that we live in. It's in the rural precincts where the real people live. And more than 80% of our population is still over there. And it's, for me, these strong feminist characters and the light at the end of the tunnel. Because I'm a hardcore feminist. I think every religious book should have been told from a feminist perspective. I think everything should have been totally feminist. And these kids, silently, quietly, they're running everything. Not just youngsters, the woman power. It's just so much to learn from all of this. So it's just something that I've taken off and hope that little bits will sort of impact other lives around me. That's what it's about.
Just the passion with which she's speaking also, is such an indicator that the way you have lived these characters, it's just so beautiful to see. Abhi, the way you're speaking about it, it's awesome. Mita ji, you've been a journalist as well. So मैं आपसे ये सवाल तो है, but I also want to ask you that as a journalist, we've always told ना कि कहानी लिखो. Not just reporting facts, but now make it a kahani that, someone sitting in one corner of the Delhi should be able to relate to it. You've said कि इनके घर में मारपीट हो गया है, इनके घर में there's been a rape case. But how has it been for you, both as a journalist and some characters that you remember from your books?
So I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb here, because here are two women who create very powerful fiction. The journalist in me is so deeply ingrained that I write narrative nonfiction. And I tell real life stories even in my book. So in my first book, my family they played the real characters. It was a food book, come travelogue, come memoir, come whatever. So I just wrote it. So my kids were as big pains in the asses as they are now. Joint family setup like every other joint family setup. So, I didn't do anything different, frankly. I don't think I have the imagination to create characters. I think they suck the imagination out of me. But no, I wrote that book for my daughters. because I was married into this very conventional Panju family, and food was obviously the center of everyone's existence. I love cooking, but this was just my give back to my girls that, when the moment a daughter is born in a Punjabi family, the mother and the grandmother and all starts thinking of getting her married. And traditionally, conventionally, I'm saying about a few decades ago, they'd start collecting her dowry from then onwards. And having been a journalist, having reported and worked with domestic violence and rape, I don't like to call them victims, but people who've been raped, seen that up close and all of that, I told my girls, I said, this is what you're going to get. I'm just going to give a book. And no dowry showry ka dreams, huh? Don't do that. And that's what they got. So that was my dedication to my children. And my son obviously feels left out because his name wasn't, it was clearly dedicated to my girls. Yeah. And that was again my answer to a patriarchal family. Me showing a finger basically.
Wow. That's so awesome. So the next question, of course, is because she said feminist, and aap keh rahe hain ki this was your showing finger. I just want to know that, and I could be wrong, that there still is a shortage of women protagonists, as in या कहानी जो औरतों के बारे में ज़्यादा है, या तो मैं बिल्कुल गलत हूँ, या तो in a way where I say where they're powerful characters that you remember. How do you change that? Or maybe again I'm saying that could be completely wrong, and I would love to know your take on that. Because even today, when and again my definition of stories is based on what I teach. So whenever I ask my students, name 10 male characters, they will cross 20. And whenever I say women, they'll start with the regular, Rani Lakshmi Bai, and they'll go all over the place, and then they'll stop. I have barely crossed 7. So या तो मेरे students ही सब बेवकूफ़ हैं, but I just want to know your take as being 3 women, writers, what is your take on the whole fact that women and their stories, are they being told? And जो आपकी कहानियाँ हैं, even your previous books, can I address anything that from your previous book you want to sort of bring to the table? And you could think completely different. Huh? This was again just based on all that I...
So that's a very interesting question. In fact, in answer to this question, there's a book that I wrote called Rising 30 Women Who Changed India. And in that, I chronicle the lives of 30 women, of which some of whom we've heard of. I have the Lata Mangeshkar, and I have the known names, and the Sushma Swaraj, and the Sheila Dikshit, but I also have unknown names. People we've never heard about, because I think their stories also need to be told, and if it takes reeling in somebody with the bigger names to get the unknown names read about and known about, it's something that I should do. And it's not just the girls that I want to read this book. I need the boys to have more female role models as well. I need the boys to be... I have a son, and his mama, you started on that feminist thing again. So that's like a pet peeve with him. But now he is perhaps more of a feminist than I am. And I think it's paid off, all the indoctrination of all these years. But having said that, yes, women are telling the stories. Women have always been telling their stories. Virginia Woolf said for most of history, woman was anonymous. Anonymous was a woman. We've had recent historical and archaeological evidence that says the first author was a female priestess in Mesopotamia. I cannot pronounce that name, and I will not even try it on camera. But women have been telling their stories, but has the world been listening?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never thought of counting whether there are more women or more men as protagonists or characters, or more women telling stories. Though there was this there is always an ongoing debate about how male authors get paid more, and
that was my next
women,
thing as to what
women
is the deal with the
authors,
payment.
don't get, well, it's still a reality.
Really?
Yeah, and the debate was more rampant and vibrant in the Western world, unfortunately not in our country, because our country is basically, the publishing industry is just struggling to survive. They don't have time to look at all of this. But I think it's a very, very relevant question, and I somehow, when I talk to industry leaders, I always ask them, I said, are we not being very myopic in the way we are moving forward? And is it only about balancing your bank accounts or showing it to your bosses, ki haan, we've done a fine job? But if you're coming back to this, yes, it is a palpable reality. Then we need to have more women telling more stories. We need to have more women characters. We need to have more Lolitas or whatever, more Anna Kareninas, more. It's not that they weren't there.
No, they were always there.
No, but the thing is,
Yeah, but,
but they were told by men.
I love that.
Also, no, if you go back even to our own ancient culture, to our myths, our legends, it's the men who are celebrated more than the women. It's like, who talks about Gargi?
Correct.
Who talks about other women, saints or priestesses or whoever made a life for themselves? How many? I mean, we've got a Manu Pillai bringing all of them to life. I'm just giving, because I was at the museum this morning, so I was kind of connecting the dots. But we definitely need to sit up and watch this for ourselves. So you made a very relevant point, and unfortunately don't have a very pleasant answer.
No, that's fine, because before I come to you, I come from Gujarat, and Gujarat is called, the place for entrepreneurship. And whenever we are documenting stories, there are these men, and you know how they are, like the men, jinhone dhanda kiya hai. And I'm thinking, why is the story of this very powerful woman called Induben Khakrawala, who's not been celebrated because she is a cult, she died, but I mean, she has changed technology in terms of packaging. She has brought something which is homemade and made it marketable, right? And Gujarat is a very interesting state. We make amazing snacks, but we can't have daru. We have the chaknas of the world. But she was a chakna queen. Yeah, and there is nothing celebrated about her. And here you're celebrating that guy who's made the jacket for the PM, and the same men celebrated again and again. And my struggle, both as a feminist and as a storyteller, is kidhar hai ye kahaniyan, main kaise leke aun? Because if I am performing stories, I am still struggling, and I want to do stories of women who are entrepreneurs, and still, but no, it's been so crazy. So anyway, sorry, Nirmala, over to you. It's got a little emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's like, so it's all over, it's all around us, right? So you go for a wedding, a man is tying a tali, or everything is so, you take on your husband's name, everything is just so, in movies, the heroine is just somebody, the women characters are just planted there to take the story forward, that's it, just little events in the life. To take his story forward, just little events in the man's life or whatever. So it's all around us. And but then, of late, I must talk about two authors. I interviewed Sabin this morning about Shamal Days, and he's a very sensitive person who pays a lot of focus to his female characters. And today in the interview, I also discovered that he's hugely influenced by the women in his life. His daughter is a budding cricketer, and he's looking after a wife who's been unwell for a while. And there's such a sensitive, beautiful, feminine side touch to his writing. And at the Bangalore Lit Fest in December, I read Ranbir Sandhu's book, Dark Side. A beautiful perspective, told from from beginning to end. It's stylistically brilliant, told from the perspective of a dying woman. All right, I leave it at that, but you must read it. It's very sensitive, very beautifully handled. And this is the ray of hope, whereas we women are telling the stories, but I'm just so excited to see that the men I am meeting around me, at least some of them, are doing this. And unknown to my own self, I'm just actually, and this is a ray of hope. It's about that tiny drop in the ocean. One person does it, and then it kind of, takes I mean, takes you forward. Like, you know, Elizabeth and Jane Austen always stands out. There's this character coming, or Cleopatra, whatever, you know. So it doesn't matter how bold or, you know, inconsequential they may be, but they are characters which are driving the story. And to also see sensitive men around you is a good ray of hope. Whereas so much bad happening around you, there's also a ray of hope. And that's what we should celebrate. And the more we celebrate that, more people will come forward and do it. That's how it works.
Totally fingers are crossed.
Yeah, can I just add
please,
one
please.
point to it? I can't resist this, but I agree with Nirmala and what Kiran also said, is that there are more and more such cases happening. But sorry to be a bubble pricker, we always had a place at the table. We don't need to shout out loud or celebrate every such occasion. It has to be a way of life. Why do I have to struggle to get a woman's voice heard? So, and why do we need validation from anybody to tell our stories? Till we don't reach that stage, we are fighting that battle. And I don't understand why. Like, as much as that man has his place on the table, I too. It is the same claim. Also, I think in today's world, we need to go across from the gender binary and just recognize the person to be a human being, and respect and dignity has to be given to the human being, not to a woman, not to a man, not for what they've done or not done. And that needs to come across in our stories. And let's just be human, guys. That's all I genuinely, because, you know, when I'm writing as an agent, I did a piece for Hindustan Times many years back, and I wrote about this. I said, why are we even debating? We've always had that place. So what is this whole shouting from the rooftop कि हम औरतें हैं तो हमको ये जगह चाहिए, हमारे पास है वो जगह. बोलो, आगे बढ़ो, speak. And be normal about it. Don't like tom-tom about it. Just be very nonchalant and normal. You know?
So actually yesterday when we were coming in the car, we were talking to some authors, and someone made a statement that India is a very unsafe place for women. It is. As a single woman who lives here every day, and a totally emancipated woman who turns back and gives it to people all the time, okay? And simple things. I'm riding my bike in Bangalore. I honk. The guy won't move. If it's a girl, he will come and try to run you down. But I make it a point to go and park my bike in front of his car, take his picture, yell at him and go. Because today he doesn't affect me, but I do not want him to affect any other woman. Okay? I'm stopping a neighbor from illegally cutting the branch of a tree, a public tree planted on the road. And that woman has the gumption to tell me, you live alone, I'll call my husband. She actually calls her husband. I have many friends and uncles and whoever I could call. Said, you bloody well call who you want. I will not call any man. I will call the bloody cops. Yeah? So, but it's just me. And that's because I have the guts to do it. And I'm not fearful. But it's not so easy for everybody else. We still are there. We are still very, very, very far behind. Because at every step, there are idiotic women and worse men actually trying to pull you down all the time. You know, it's very difficult.